Welcome to Coaching Unveiled. I'm James Fenimore from Fenterprises, joined as always by Jason Donahue from Level Up Fusion Coaching. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you today?
Oh, very good, very good. Today we're talking about imposter syndrome, something I think we all can relate to on some sort of a level. And we wanted to kind of intro it and show what it means and how coaching could help. So why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome definitely is something that many people can relate to. I actually think it's just part of human growth and development. And really, the core issue with that involves about confidence. Because imposter syndrome is where we're on the side of a continuum where we don't believe we have the ability to do something. We actually don't have the ability to do it, or our environments are not designed for us to be able to do it. But I said continuum because as we come back to neutral space, that Goldilocks zone of being able to do something and stretch ourselves, I think that there's people on the other side of the spectrum too that are just the Dunning-Kruger effect. They believe they have the ability to do something, and they're that Monday morning quarterback, but they haven't put themselves in the arena to prove it yet. And so what we wanted to talk about today was being able to come to the neutral point, but by understanding imposter syndrome first. What thoughts do you have?
Well, my first thought is, did my wife put you up to bring up Dunning-Kruger? Because I feel like I might get accused of that sometimes. Not when it comes to important stuff like the laundry. She knows I've already tried to pretend. I got serious imposter syndrome about the laundry. But no, in all seriousness, I think that's a beautiful place to start, right? Because imposter syndrome isn't just a one way. I can't do it. Sometimes it's I could do anything, and that's a problem too. Now, we've joked about this in the past. More than likely, the people that are suffering from the imposter syndrome are going to seek out coaching than people that think that they could do anything without any help. It would be a very rare situation for them to get coaching. It was more likely that their company's sponsoring them to get coaching to let them understand that you don't have to know everything. It's
Mhm.
okay to learn something or not have the answer and have to go find it or lean on a colleague. Um, for the imposter syndrome side of things, coaching is a beautiful way to help you through that. Remember, we're asking you questions from your lived experiences to help you grow and hit your goals. So when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, if we're able to pull out of you via active questioning, active listening, experiences that build up your confidence and show you that you are qualified through your experience, that's a great way to get you kind of inching closer to that neutrality that you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that a lot of times people that are experiencing imposter syndrome, they're not really sure what they're truly capable of. I love the idea that comes out of Navy SEALs called the 40% rule. And it's the idea that, push yourself, push yourself, push yourself. And to the moment you feel like breaking, you're actually only at 40% capacity of who you truly are and what you can truly do. But a lot of times people will give up, and I think we're living in more and more of a society that it's easier to give up faster and sooner without taking a look at no one came out of the womb able to ride a bike like that. No one came out of the womb. We were talking about this prior to recording, to be a CEO. There are some people maybe in family businesses that are destined to go to that role, but that doesn't mean they have the capability of doing that role. So part of it is doing that accurate analysis about self that we'll talk about in part two of this conversation. But I do think imposter syndrome is something that everybody can relate to in any sphere of their life. Your thoughts?
So I think a great tactic for anyone suffering from imposter syndrome is to remember situations that they might have been forced into, not voluntarily went into, where this voice in their head keeps telling them, you're not good enough for that promotion, you're not good enough for that man or woman you want to date, they're outside of your league, just that you're not qualified enough, you don't have the experience. Okay, fine. I get that. We all have that to a degree. But what about those things that you were thrust upon you, right? And I think the great example of that is when for those of us that have become a parent. I heard a great quote. We've talked about it. Was a guy? Somebody was afraid that they were not man enough to be a father, and the person they were talking to turned around and said, "You're not man enough to be a father. In fact, Nobody's man enough to be a father until they become a father. And then an activation switch goes off and they become a father. Now, of course, obviously there's outliers to everything.
Mhm.
I'm not brushing this with a broad stroke here, but a lot of people can relate to that.
Mhm.
When they were called to action, when the time came, it just worked and they knew what they needed to do. If you don't know how to change a diaper, you're going to figure it out real fast. If you don't know how to, warm a bottle, you're going to figure it out real fast. If you don't know how to, fold the baby clothes, which maybe that's a bad one because I still suffer. But you get what I'm saying. You're gonna work it out and you're gonna figure it out. But you didn't have time for somebody to tell you you can't do it. You didn't have an option. The baby's coming. The baby's
Mhm.
coming. All right. So you got to work it out. So remember moments like that where you didn't have the opportunity to doubt yourself, or you did doubt yourself, but you didn't have an opportunity to say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to go for the promotion. I'm not going to go and ask that girl for her number. I'm not going to go and, join that rec league because I haven't played ball in 5 years and I don't know if I could hang with these guys. Who cares? Go for it. You'll figure it out. That's usually the way it is if you're honest with yourself. I'm not telling you go from, doorman to go apply for CEO, go from doorman to apply to a position at the company, and then eventually apply for the CEO.
Mhm. Yeah, I love the points you just brought up, and I think part of building on those points too is there are sink and swim moments, in life. I'm always amazed that the idea when you ask people how they learn how to swim, and for some they talked about somebody just pushed me in the water and I had to figure it out. So hey, luckily enough, they were able to figure it out. But there's a lot of people who haven't and didn't. And then they become terrified of any type of approach to something similar of an activity to that. And then not only does imposter syndrome step in, but now it steps in with emotional impact behind it. And to reflect back on previous conversations we had, that's also the power then of being able to make referrals to mental health professionals that can help with those anxieties and those feelings in the past. However, what also is needed is to understand that the point you made a while ago, it's about skill development. Again, I talked about riding a bike a moment ago. I know I had to have training wheels, and you go with I remember starting out with the big wheel. If you remember that, the little big plastic wheels right around that. Then it moved to a bike and had training wheels on both sides. Got skilled at that. One of the training wheels came off, so it was still the bike with one side of training wheels because I would wobble, with it. But eventually, that skill level kept, that layer cake. Experience new skill, experience new skill, experience new skill, to where the second training wheel could come off and I was no longer an imposter because I had this confidence that was layering up versus just that absolute sink and swim, shove into the pool. Hopefully you can make it, bud. That's not really the most ideal way of learning.
Funny you bring up the pool because I feel like you probably did talk to my wife before this because I joked with her that that's how we're going to have to teach the kids to swim. I go, it'll work. They'll figure it out. But the reason actually is on this topic. We recently put a pool in, and we've got two small children. The safest thing to do is to get them to learn how to swim immediately because God forbid one of them falls in. These things happen. So of course we were behind the eight ball because we both have so much going on, and all the swim teachers were booked up all summer. All summer. So we really got like a really negative feeling like, oh my gosh, what did we do? We're never going to get them to swim. And that imposter syndrome started sinking and coming in on us. But my wife was like, we can't just let them go all summer and not learn how to swim. So she just took it upon herself, started teaching how to swim. Within an hour, both of my kids were swimming. Now, could they swim the English Channel? No, but they could get to the side of the pool and help themselves. So we were thrust into this scenario where we had no choice, and my wife picked up the lantern and drove forward with it, and she taught them how to swim. And it's like it's incredible because this was something that was weighing on us, and like we were really really upset about and nervous about, and like we're going to get extra locks on the back door. We already have three. We're going to get more to make sure the kids could get outside. But what did she do? She just said, you know what, it's up to us now. it's up to us now. There is no other solution. And she went out there with them one afternoon and then called me down from the office, and I was just like, what is going on here? I was like in shock. And now like going to the pool is like the most fun for us. So it really is a great little anecdote of how imposter syndrome could sink in. But when you're thrust into the situation and you just plow your way forward, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think too, you mentioned a little bit earlier, and I'll just add the term to it, the ability to reflect back on bright spots in your life.
Mhm.
So yes, we can reflect back on those times that we tried something and failed. And little kids, when they fail, they're so much fun to watch, like rollerblading or anything like that, riding a bike, because they fall down, they giggle, laugh about it, get up and to go again. As adults, when we failed, first thing we do is look around and see if anybody saw it, because we don't want to be embarrassed by it. And then if somebody did, we pull back, and we don't want to try that again because we look foolish for some people. And then that block becomes our way. But if we remember what it is to be a kid again, and all those bright spots of, I did learn how to do this, I did learn how to swim, I did learn how to ride a bike, I did learn how to do X, then I can draw that forward into my present and be able to move on. One of the things I heard in a podcast this morning was from a personal trainer that talked about, if you want to be a stud, you need to start out as a flower bud. And the
Mm.
point he was making was, no one shows up to the gym and can instantly throw weights around. You need to have proper technique, proper foundation. Then you build on that. And I think that's part of what we'll talk about as solutions, to imposter syndrome is, how do you start out as the flower bud? I know we're kind of wrapping up on time soon. What final thoughts do you have?
Well, just your note on failure. I'd like to remind everybody: if you listen to any successful CEO or hyper successful anyone, they're going to tell you over and over again, fail. You have to fail. If you don't fail, you don't move forward. If you're not failing, you're not trying anything new. Failing is not a bad thing. It means you're doing something. Okay. It's very easy to get on our couch and watch Netflix. That's easy. Failing means you're progressing, means you're doing something. Nobody failed at watching Netflix. Okay. Nobody failed at, eating a bowl of ice cream. But where you do fail is when you're trying to accomplish something new. Thomas Edison, not the greatest guy in the world, but I didn't fail 1,000 times at creating a light bulb. I figured out 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that reframe. So don't be afraid to fail. Failure is going to build your confidence. It's going to teach you lessons as long as you allow it to. If you do it, Jason, what you mentioned, and just like, who saw, what am I going to do? And retreat, failure will cripple you. But I would say that as a last thing on imposter syndrome for this episode, next episode, we'll talk about maybe some frameworks and some methodologies we've come up with to really help you get through it. But for this one, I would say that is a great place to kind of start wrapping up. And don't be afraid to fail. It's part of the process.
I absolutely agree. Fail forward. Fail
Fail
forward.
forward.
That's right.
That's it.
That's
All
right.
right. Well, thank you for your time, Jason. Thank you for joining us, guys. This has been Coaching Unveiled, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.